True Crime Arizona's Brianna Whitney has been following this case for years. And Brianna, we heard today from somebody who arguably knows the defendant better than anybody else. What did we learn?
Yeah, so I can tell you guys, I was watching this live and my mouth was just wide open. I mean, that's what we were hearing. I truly have never heard such wild testimony from any case I have ever covered. The defense is saying Bryan Patrick Miller is not guilty by reason of insanity due to a mental condition. Now, parts of their defense has included his fear and discomfort with and around knives, but how his ex-wife Amy describes aspects of their relationship and what he would do to her, including with knives, is incredibly alarming. And we do want to warn you, this testimony is graphic.
He expressed that he enjoyed seeing me in pain, but he loved me enough not to kill me.
Her face shielded from the media, Bryan Patrick Miller's ex-wife Amy revealing sinister aspects of their relationship publicly for the very first time. It was clear from the start of her testimony she was very passive and submissive to what Bryan wanted from her.
What the husband wanted is what the wife was supposed to do.
That school of thought would become more apparent as the day went on. Bryan Patrick Miller is accused of brutally stabbing two young women to death, Angela Brasso and Melanie Bernis, back in 1992 and 1993. They were dubbed the Canal Murders and went unsolved for decades until DNA and genealogy linked Miller to both crime scenes, and he was arrested in 2015. That's when he was portraying his character, the zombie hunter, in the community. Amy and Bryan met in Phoenix and got engaged a few years after the Canal Murders, before moving to Washington State. It was there that Amy noticed Bryan's sexual aggression became concerning after he was acquitted for stabbing a woman in self-defense. That's when Amy says Bryan started consistently printing out porn and saving it on his computer.
At some point, it's very violent sexual situations.
Were any of the images that had throats being cut?
Yes.
Were any of the images of women being killed?
Yes.
She says in the bedroom, he ramped things up as well.
Earliest on, there were small knives. Later, after release, that included straight pins as well.
Amy said he would use those sharp objects to make her bleed.
When you would bleed, what would he do?
He would both lick the wounds and play in the blood.
Amy told the court she always complied in hopes to stay alive. But perhaps the most chilling revelation Thursday, she says part of Bryan desired to murder her.
He stated at one point and eventually got to where he fairly commonly would state that if he didn't love me so much, he would like to kill me.
Did that comment impact your willingness to argue with him, say no to him, that kind of thing?
Very much. I would have been scared to object.
Amy and Bryan did eventually divorce before he was arrested for the Canal Murders. They also share a daughter together. Because there was so much to unpack here, we will have a part 2 tomorrow with the secrets and confessions Bryan shared with her about other victims. Amy is not done testifying, but we're not sure when she'll be back in court. As of now, this trial will be going into April. To put that into perspective, it started at the very beginning of October.
Yeah, and this is an unusual trial in so many ways because it's a bench trial. It's being led by a judge. Talk about the possible sentences here, the possible conviction, guilty, not guilty, all that.
Right, so to your point, there is no jury, so this is all up to a judge, right? One judge listening to months and months of testimony. If he's found guilty, this is a death penalty case, so he could be looking at death, he could be looking at life in prison, but what the defense is going for is not guilty by reason of insanity. They're all but saying, yeah, his DNA was there, he did this, but they're saying his dissociative amnesia disorder and his autism made it so he didn't understand what he was doing at the time was wrong, and that's what they're arguing for.
You know what's interesting, we're hearing all this testimony, it's wild. And there is descriptions of this couple being religious.
Very.
Could you explain that? Because this doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and this is obviously a small part of what we heard today. This was an all-day testimony, but they talked about the fact, I mean, he was part of the Mennonite church. She was also very religious. There was talk of them not having sex before marriage at all. They only did that one time. So to where it escalated to the point that we just reported on, I mean, things just got out of control. And so it really paints two different pictures of a religious couple versus what was actually happening behind closed doors.
All right, so part 2 tomorrow.
Part 2 tomorrow.
All right, Brianna, thank you for breaking down such a complicated case.